Yes, a very good afternoon to all. As you know, we are running the chapter number 7, that is evolution. Basically, evolution is a progression of life on the earth since the origin of life on the earth. Whatever form in which life originated on the earth, approximately 3 billion years ago. Since then, life has been changing, transforming itself in the form of the changes in the form of varieties of organisms appearing and disappearing on the earth, a continuous ongoing process. By and large, it has transformed the life from its simple version to very complex forms also. So, transformation of a life from simple to complex one in a slow, gradual, progressive manner. Slow, gradual, progressive transformation of life from simple to complex. This process is identified as evolution. Whatever was the form of life at the time of origin, present form of life is a bit different from that. The kind of complexity in the organization, it has changed. The number of varieties of organisms is very high. So by and large, we can say that life has evolved from simple to complex version, from few varieties to plenty of varieties. The process of evolution, which is a slow, gradual, progressive transformation of life on the earth. This is the definition of evolution, meaning of the term evolution. Before we go to the next topic of ours, as you know, our last topic was Miller's experiment. Before I switch over to the next major topic, that is evidences of evolution, two names must be mentioned in the field of evolution study. One of them, Charles Darwin. A British biologist, British scientist, evolutionist, the one who was sort of founder in the field of evolution study, you can say that. Almost considered as a father of this evolution field study. And one more scientist, which who also has contributed a lot. We will see about him after a few minutes. So let's get the idea about these two scientists who are very eminent in the field of evolution. Their contributions are very important one. First one, Charles Darwin. He was supported by the royal family of Britain. He was given one ship called HMS Beagle. He carried out sea voyage in this ship that is the ship that is called as HMS Beagle. He went to the various places on the earth, but particularly his work on Galapagos Islands. his work on Galapagos Islands. Now, as you can see that it is the South America, its west coast. It is the west coast of South America. Away from it, in the Pacific Ocean, there is a cluster of 6 to 7 islands, popularly known as Galapagos Islands. So Darwin's work at Galapagos Islands made him world famous scientist. Actually, his work was contemporary to that of, if you remember, um, Mendel's work. If you remember, I told you Mendel's work was not given adequate focus because everybody was fascinated with Darwin's work at that time. So everyone was diverted, oriented towards the evolution findings which he was revealing at that time. I'm sure at least one or two can recall that information. So what Charles Darwin suggested, one of the suggestion, the idea that he put forth is that whatever forms of life which are prevailing today, whatever type of living organisms which are existing today, the kind of biodiversity that is prevailing today is a result of evolution in pre-existing forms of life. Pre-existing forms of life. It is the pre-existing forms of life which have transformed themselves into new forms of life, which are existing in a present scenario. So that was one of the major finding or understanding that was established by Charles Darwin. So he focused upon this evolutionary aspect, that evolution is transforming the pre-existing life into new life. New forms of life do not come from other planet. They do not arise spontaneously. They just are the modifications of previously existing organisms. Like humans, whatever are existing today are the modified ape ape-mans, ape-man, then caveman, then present modern man. So today's modern man is a descendant of caveman. That caveman was a descendant of ape man. That ape man was descendant of ape. So the whole concept of descendancy of, modified forms of life is all about evolution. That's what he explained. His findings particularly were presented by him in his book. The book was based on the theme of natural selection, evolution of a species by the means of natural selection. That is something which is responsible for evolution over there. That's what he explained. He suggested that population and or groups of organisms they exhibit variations in them. Some of these variations are useful, others are useless or harmful. Those which possess useful variations, they are enabling the organism to survive, so it leads to survival. It leads to survival, and those which survive are considered to be fittest. So the concept of survival of fittest comes in the picture. And those which are fit enough will continue the reproduction. So they will gain reproductive fitness. And that reproductive fitness, once it is gained, you are naturally selected. Populations of the organisms experience variations in characters. Some are useful, others are harmful. Useful ones will enable the organism to successfully survive in the given environment, to continue to reproduce, and they will be naturally selected forms. They will continue to evolve. Those which are having harmful variations will be eliminated from the face of earth. Simple. So this was some of the these were some of the observations and findings made by Charles Darwin. Another scientist who is well known in the same field, let's talk about him. British naturalist Alfred Wallace, Father Alfred Wallace. Father Alfred Wallace, or Alfred Wallace, he was a British naturalist, again, the one who has visited different parts of the earth, different continents, and he was also the one who worked at Amazon River Basin. उन्होंने Amazon, that is South America, का visit किया था. As well as he worked in Southeast Asia, particularly the patch of islands near the Indonesia and Indonesian region that is called as archipelago. Malaya archipelago. This zone, Malaysia, Indonesia, New Guinea, Papua Guinea, and some other clusters of islands. And another one was in this region, the basin of the Amazon. So you can imagine two different parts of the earth he also visited. And he also made almost similar observations. Alfred Wallace also made similar observations like Darwin, something about natural selection. He may not have used the word natural selection, but he always brought in the picture regarding this different characters of the organisms depending upon the kind of environment and habitat in which they live. So impact of the habitat and environment on the organism and its characteristics. Again, that is all about natural selection and evolutionary aspects. So by and large, both scientists worked, of course, both were British naturalists, both have contributed a lot in evolution, both have visited different parts of the earth and studied the environmental conditions and their impacts on the organisms and their evolution. Galapagos Islands made Darwin very famous. Malaya archipelago work made Father Alfred Wallace very famous. Basically, both were eminent scientists, but of course, Darwin's place is much higher than any other evolutionist and naturalist in that list of scientists in contribution of theirs in the field of evolution study. Well, that was a brief introduction of these two scientists, very important one. If you have any doubt, any question, anything to ask, 10 seconds available. I'll wait for it. If not, I will go to the next one. Okay, no question from your side, which is indicating that I need to go to the next topic. Let's see what's our next topic. Evidences of evolution is our next topic. See, you know what is an evolution? Transformation of life from simple to complex category in slow, gradual, progressive manner. We call this as the we call this as the evolution, rather, process of evolution. This evolution has happened. Everyone knows that fact. But we need to prove it. So we need to provide, as a biologist, we can provide certain evidences which will suggest, which will prove, which will confirm that the evolution has occurred over there. Now, the point is that which are these evidences? So there are certain direct evidences and there are certain indirect evidences. Two categories of evidences are available, direct and indirect one. As far as some of the, we will go through some of them, such as paleontological evidences, comparative anatomical and morphological evidences, embryological evidences, breeding biology as a subject which is responsible for this, or rather explaining this evolution. So breeding biology, then biochemical evidences. So plenty of evidences wherein some are directly suggesting that evolution has happened and others are indirectly suggesting that it has happened over there, the evolution process. We start with the first in this list, and that is paleontological evidences. Paleontology. What is paleontology? It's a study of dash. It's a study of what? Fossils. The direct evidences of evolution. Directly, when you study the fossil, you can make out what was the pattern of evolution, what type of living forms prevailed on the earth. Every such information can be gathered from paleontological evidences. Let us first understand the term fossil. What is the meaning of the term fossil? Does anyone know the meaning of the term fossil or no idea? Okay. It's a Latin term. Literal meaning is to dig out. Well, basically, the life forms which existed on the earth once upon a time, when they got buried in the earth crust, either alive or in a dead form, somehow they got buried in the earth crust. There remain imprints on the rock, or else their eggs, their pollen, exines, their shells, their bones, their teeth, their any such body parts which are left over. And at times the entire body can be turned to a fossil. Mammoth example is a classic example, which got buried in the glacier. And in glacier, decomposition doesn't happen. So entire body remained as a fossilized body. So basically, anyhow, if the organism gets buried in the earth crust, its body gets decomposed, but certain portions, certain parts do not get decomposed easily. So they remain as it is in the form of the fossils. Maybe the skeleton, the bones, the teeth, the shell, their tusks. Maybe, in some cases, literally their imprints, because the whole body may decompose, leaving behind the imprints. It is also a possibility. So these are fossils. And fossils are extremely important in understanding the evolution. I give you one classic example how fossils can be so important in understanding the evolution. We know about the organisms of our times, those which are existing. But how do we know about the organisms of past? Example, dinosaurs. So has anyone seen the actual dinosaur on the earth? Tell me, is there any human who has seen the dinosaur on the earth? No, it's an extinct organism which is not existing at present. How do we talk about the dinosaurs so confidently that there were this much sized big dinosaurs, and they were, some of them were herbivorous, some of them were carnivores, them were running with that speed, this speed. We actually made some movies on that. Is that possible to imagine about that organism which we have not seen, which existed in past? And it was like that only. All the credit goes to the paleontologist, the fossil study they have carried out, particularly about the fossils of the dinosaurs and their skeleton and their egg. They have revealed every small little information about dinosaurs, and it looks as if dinosaurs are not extinct. We know as much as we know about any other existing organism. All credit goes to the paleontological study. And I don't know if someone is in touch with the latest informations. Otherwise, he or she would have been knowing this thing. Recently, they have discovered an egg of dinosaur in which the dinosaur baby, the developing baby, is as it is preserved. Have you heard about that fact? Anyone? Yeah, that information came in when we search Google. No, the some of the information they provide from their side. So one article was there that recently they have discovered an egg in which the body of the dinosaur, baby dinosaur, is preserved as it is. Can you imagine how much information that could provide to the scientists over there? Unbelievable. So paleontological study is extremely important in understanding the organisms of past, something about their morphology, their body size, and all other possible information that we can gather about organisms of past, we can obtain from paleontological study, and it is considered to be the best and a direct evidence of evolution. 10 seconds given. If you have any question, you raise it. If not, I move to the next one. No question, we go to the next one. May I ask you, what is anatomy? Anatomy is a study of dash. Internal features of the body, isn't it? Exactly. The study of internal structures and internal features of the body of the organisms is called anatomy. And what about the morphology? External features of the body. So basically, the study of external features as well as internal features, respectively morphology and anatomy, in a comparative manner. Comparative means, like, if you study about the vertebrates, let's say vertebrates, comparative anatomy of vertebrates. So major groups: fishes, amphibia, reptilia, aves, and mammals, the major groups of vertebrates. If you compare their anatomical features, if you compare their morphological features, and you come to certain conclusions which help you to understand the evolution. Let's see what are they. First one, homologous organs. With example, it would be more suitable to understand the homologous organs concept. So I go straight away with the example, and then I will take you to the definition. You must have heard about this thing that, the bats, in them, four limbs are modified into wings. सुना है आपने? Similarly, whales, four limbs are modified into flipper. In cheetah, they are the legs and the forelimbs that they are, and then in the man they are considered as the arms. Now you just got to tell me about their anatomical aspects. You see, all are modified forelimbs. Which is supposed to be the firstborn in them? Which is the firstborn, Human forelimb, firstborn. Humerus. Second, radius and ulna. Third, carpals. Fourth, metacarpals. And fifth, phalanges. Have you heard about this? Sets of bones in forelimb of human. 11th standard, we have learned about this in chapter number 20. Same is the pattern for all of them. In all of them, the first is the humerus. In all of them, next is radius and ulna. In all of them, the next are carpals, next are metacarpals, and last are phalanges. The number may vary a little bit. वैसे तो in all of them, one is humerus, next are two radius and ulna, then are few what are called carpals and few metacarpals and phalanges large in number. Look at the anatomy. Anatomically, they all are similar. You agree or not? Can you see the anatomical similarity? All are made up of bones, pattern of bones, arrangement same. Humerus, radioulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. Acha, what is the function of wings? They help in flying. What's the function of flippers? They help in swimming. What's the function of forelimbs in cheetah? They help in running. And function of arms and forelimbs, hands in human, that is to grip the things, gripping the object. Point is that all of them had a same anatomical features, but functionally they are different from each other. Such organs are called homologous organs, and the phenomenon is identified as homology. How many have understood the concept of homologous organs? How should we define? The organs that are structurally or anatomically similar, but functionally different, dissimilar. They are to be called as which organs? They are to be called as which organs? homologous organs. And this phenomenon is identified as homology. Anatomically similar structures but developed along different directions. Acha, humans and monkeys, they were arboreal. Arboreal means living on trees. So they developed these forelimbs in gripping. Cheetahs were on ground, cursorial. So they developed their forelimbs for running. Whales were aquatic. So they developed their forelimbs for swimming. And bats were aerial. So they developed their forelimbs for which aspect? Flying. Although they all were of a same group, because of their different needs, their adaptations into their different habitats, they developed the same organ in a different way. This leads to the development of what is called homologous organs. Members of close groups develop their organs in a different way, develop their same structure in a different way, just because they are occupying different habitats or maybe they need to adapt to different environments, then that phenomenon is called as homology or homologous organ development. This phenomenon is also known as divergent evolution. See, evolution is diverging this group from one category to different other categories over there. Although all are mammals, bats, whales, cheetah, and human, all are mammals. But one of the group of the mammals is aerial, so it develops forelimbs for flying. Another group is aquatic, so using its forelimbs for swimming. Another group is cursorial, living on ground, so using it for running. And another one, arboreal, living on trees. Arbo is for tree. So we'll develop it in gripping the branches. Look at this as a divergent evolution phenomenon. Does it not explain the pattern of evolution? You understand this divergent evolution as one of the pattern of evolution, and that is the evidence of evolution, isn't it? Now, if you can correlate it, and if you can imagine, and if you have understood, and then if you have the imaginative power, then you can also reach to the point where you can give the example of such category, the homologous organs in plants. प्लांट्स में आप इमेजिन कर सकते हैं कि कोई भी दो स्ट्रक्चर्स डिफरेंट वे में यूज होते हो. स्ट्रक्चर एक ही है, एक प्लांट में वही स्ट्रक्चर दूसरे फंक्शन के लिए और दूसरे में अनदर फंक्शन के लिए यूज हो. कैन यू ब्रिंग दैट काइंड ऑफ एग्जांपल? Devanshi, if you can elaborate, stem means what? Stem is a bigger thing. उसके क्या, stem का क्या? Exactly the way this, Swati has pointed out, correct example she has given. Let me go through the same. Look at this. Thorn and tendril. Swati, as you pointed out, so you should tell me, thorn is a modified dash. Which part of a stem is a modified structure called thorn? Which part modifies into axillary bud? Swati, excellent reply. Too good. Axillary bud in the case of bougainvillea is modified into thorn. It is nothing but axillary bud. And on another hand, we have a tendril. which is also a modified axillary bud in case of cucurbits, passion flower, and other plants. Point is that both are modified axillary buds. So if you take a sectional view of thorn or tendril in a passion flower and thorn in bougainvillea, so anatomically, the tissue arrangement wise, they are almost same. But thorn is meant for which function? Exactly, it is meant for protection against grazing animals. And tendril is for which one? Climbing, support. So in a way, similar anatomy, but different functions. One is for protection, one is for support, but anatomically both are axillary bud. This is another classic example of homologous organs showing divergent evolution. Do you understand this? And lastly, the you know development of hard invertebrates. It doesn't show the divergent evolution, but this anatomical feature explains. See, first of all, vertebrate heart development, vertebrate brain development are not examples of homologous organs, although it is written here. They are not homologous organs, but the point is that they explain progressiveness in the progressive aspect of the evolution from simple to complex. Let me explain the same. We got fishes, we got amphibia, we got reptilia, we got aves, and we got mammals. How many chambered heart there is? It is present in fishes. Fishes have two chambered heart, isn't it? In amphibia, it is three chambered. In reptiles, majority have three, and crocodiles have four. And aves and mammals have four chambered heart. Look at the progressiveness in the development of heart. Similarly, brain, compared to fishes, amphibia have a more developed brain. Further more developed in case of reptilia, and further in aves, and best developed in mammals. Which aspect of evolution is revealed by the comparative development of the heart in vertebrates when you study that? Which aspect of evolution is revealed over there? Tell me. When you see the development of heart in vertebrate groups, fishes to mammals, which feature of evolution you realize over there? Come on. Progressiveness from simplicity to complexity. Exactly contrary, opposite to what we have learned in case of homologous organs. If we can understand the analogous organs, have a look. Have you heard about the wings present in the birds and also present in insects? सुना है आपने? Now, both of them use their wings for which purpose? What's the purpose of having the wings? Flying. In each case, it is going to help in flying. Common function. But anatomically, are they similar? No, they are not. In case of birds, it's about bones, It's about feathers. It's about muscles. You see a forelimb, the wing, modified forelimb, the wing. It possesses bones, it possesses feathers, it possesses muscles. All that stuff is there in their wings. What about insects? Does it have bones, feathers, and muscles in the wings part? No, absolutely not. It's basically a chitinous exoskeleton expansion. Chitinous exoskeleton it is basically. You see? So birds and insects both possess wings which have a similar function but have a dissimilar anatomy. This aspect is known as analogy. This is called as which one? Analogy. And this kind of organs are called as analogous organs. Anatomically different structures these are, but are performing similar functions in different groups of organisms. देखो homologous में लिखा था same group organisms develop these structures in a use the structures in a different way for different habitats and different needs. Here we are using for common needs. Members of different groups develop functionally similar and anatomically dissimilar structures. देखो दोनों डेफिनेशन एक दूसरे की एग्जैक्ट कॉन्ट्ररी एंड कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री. एक ग्रुप के ऑर्गेनिजम्स में डिफरेंट नीड्स के लिए same structure is used in a different way, functionally different. We call it as a divergent evolution. Opposite देखो, convergent evolution का concept understand करो. Organisms of different groups for their same need use the given organ in the same manner. The ones which are anatomically different but functionally similar, that is called that is called my mistake. Yeah, my mistake. That is called rather नहीं बराबर है convergent evolution. Common function की ओर आ रहा है, that is called convergent evolution. Have you understood the concept of convergent evolution? Anatomy different, function same. Can you quote such examples in plants other than the textbook examples? Rudra, I told you मैं ગુજરાતીમાં તમને લોકોને કહી દઉં પાઠ્યપુસ્તકમાં આપેલા ઉદાહરણો સિવાય. Examples other than those which are given in your textbook, you should quote those examples. Potato and sweet potato is already been quoted over there. So for us, it's understood. चलो ये वाला देख लेते हैं. Rudra, if you can point out how come these are okay. If you can justify how come these are analogous organs. You quoted na the example, you only explain. Can you explain, Rudra Shah?
Yes, sir.
Go on.
Sir, they are structurally different, but they perform storage and vegetative propagation.
Acha, structurally, how come they are different? Why they are different?
One is forming from this root and another is not from root.
Which one is from root and which one is from other one?
Sweet potato is from root.
And potato is from
stem.
Okay, you are correct. So if you look at them, both will help in primarily in a food storage and also in a vegetative propagation. Although one of them is a root modification, adventitious root modification, and another one is an underground stem modification. Similarly, spine and thorn. You know, cactus spine is leaf modification. Bougainvillea. Thorn is a stem modification, stem of, auxiliary bird of the stem. One is a modified auxiliary bird, the thorn, Bougainvillea, and another one is a modified leaf, that is a modified leaf, that is a spine in case of cactus. Although anatomically different, functionally they both will help in action against what? Grazing animals. Another class example of analogous organs. Other than that, you can also think about penguin, their wings, and the fins of dolphin. They are also showing some sort of analogy. Functionally same है, लेकिन एक में feathers होते हैं, दूसरे में feather नहीं होता है, hair होता है, anatomically थोड़ा different structure है वो उस sense में. So again, these two are examples of analogous organs. Also about eyes of human and the eyes of octopus. Both will help in vision, but one of them made up of different components, sclera and retina and choroid kind of structures. Lens is there, whereas the different composition of eye in case of octopus, but both will help in vision. This was a long list of analogous organs exhibiting convergent evolution. Look, the analogous organs, they explain the significance of adaptation in the field of, evolution. That adaptation plays such a significant role in leading to the varieties of organisms. So that is called evolution. So very important role of adaptation in the field of evolution, in the process of evolution, is mentioned by analogous organs over there. Boliye, कोई doubt? Okay. Another set of evidences which we're going to talk about. Let me see what is next. Biochemical evidences. See the similarities at a biochemical level in the living organisms. For example, proteins. All eukaryotes utilize histone proteins as their proteins which will be used for compaction of DNA. And the same five, H1, H2, H2B, H3, H4. Now, whether it is a smallest version of animal amongst the eukaryotic animal form, that is amoeba, to human, all those 13-14 lakh species of organisms, one thing common, all will use histones as their proteins for condensation of DNA, compaction of DNA, packaging of DNA. Similarly, the enzymes. Stomach secretes pepsin as a digestive enzyme, so that remains same whether it is fishes or amphibia, the frogs, or reptilia, the lizards, aves, the doves and sparrows, or humans amongst the mammals. Just compare the various classes of mammals. They all have a common protein, pepsin, as a digestive enzyme in stomach. Similarly, the genes, when you compare the genes of eukaryotes, all are polycistronic genes, all have exon intron arrangements over there. नहीं, monocystonic genes, my mistake. Yeah, all have monocystonic genes which are made up of exon intron arrangement. The genetic codon readings are same in all of them. AUG is the genetic codon for methionine. So right from bacteria to human, all 20 lakh species on the earth, which are so far identified, in all of them, universality of genome reading, it's the same thing. How come, even ribosome structures and organelles and every aspect, biochemical aspect, tremendous similarity in all of them. Point is that how come such a great similarity in all these organisms? What is the logic behind that? Simple logic. Initial few living forms developed certain characters. As the ancestors for the entire living world, they had certain characters which are even passed on into all descendants. Particularly the biochemical features, they are passed on in a same manner from the ancestors into descendants. And there you are talking about evolution. There the biochemical evidences explain the process of evolution. ऐसा बोलिए, कोई doubt? अच्छा, एक और भी evidences है, breeding biology, kind of a direct evidence of evolution. Breeding biology. क्या करते हैं हम कि do you know about mule? Have you heard about mule? What is that? A new variety of organism produced through the reproduction breeding technique between donkey and horse. Heard about this thing? Just like another species originated on the earth. It did not exist naturally. We created it. We created this variety. Have you heard about different breeds of dogs? Alsatian and Pomeranian and Labrador and these and that. You think all dogs varieties are natural? No, we have created through hybridization program, breeding techniques. The new varieties of plants, animals, the new breeds and varieties of animals and plants which we develop, they are nothing but the result of our hybridization technique. So through hybridization, if we can bring about new species on earth, why not nature? Why not nature can do this thing? Even nature would have used interspecific and interbreed hybridization and may have given rise to varieties of organisms on the earth. And evolution is all about having varieties of organisms on the earth, isn't it? So the diversity on the earth is an outcome of evolution. And we are showing that artificial hybridization can lead to diversity. So naturally also hybridization can happen and it can also lead to diversity. So we are supporting that evolution has happened. Is there any question? No? No question. We go to the next then. Comparative embryological evidences. Comparative embryology as the evidence of evolution. My question is, what is embryology? Tell me, what is embryology? Study of embryo, study of embryonic development of the organism, study of embryonic stages during the development of an organism is termed as embryology. Comparative embryology, for example, if somebody studies the embryo of fishes and frogs, and that is amphibia, then reptilia, then aves, and then mammals, can find some sort of similarity. And such similarity was observed by a scientist called Ernst Haeckel. So let's talk about Haeckel's theory. Ernst Haeckel, he proposed one theory which is called as recapitulation theory. Name of the theory is recapitulation theory. The theory is called as recapitulation theory. Embryos, it says that ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. यहाँ पे ontogeny का मीनिंग होता है development of an individual or development of an organism or development of a descendant. Recapitulates, sort of brief repetition. Phylogeny means life history of ancestor. इसको कंबाइन कर दे तो ऐसा होता है ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. The development of the descendant is a brief repetition of ancestral life history. Ancestors' life history is in brief recapped or repeated during the development of the descendant organism. Let us understand this with an example. Our ancestral chordate from which all these have evolved, that chordate ancestor. Chordates have certain basic features in them. For example, they have a notochord in their back region. सुना है आपने? Notochord in the back, gill slits in pharynx region, and tail in a postanal region after the anus, which is called postanal tail. Have you heard about these 3 or 4 as the fundamental features of chordate, pillars of chordate? Having presence of notochord, having presence of gill slits and tail. Because our common ancestral chordate version, it was an aquatic one and was respiring through gills, so it had these features. Now every descendant chordate, जैसे fishes हो, amphibia, reptilia, या mammals, इन सबको descendant chordates कहते हैं, उसमें से जो descend हुए. They all show these characters in their early embryonic stages. Early embryo of fish, frog, lizard, bird, mammal, अगर आप compare करोगे तो you will find that all of them have gill slits, all of them have tail, all of them have this notochord development. Then how come it is lost in mammals in the adult stages and it is still retained? देखो, fishes still are aquatic, so they do retain these features, some of them. But humans have evolved further, so they do not show these features in an adult stage. Although they do show these features in their embryo, is a proof that they are the descendants of that initial chordate ancestral form. सो एंसेस्टर में जो फीचर्स होते हैं वही ट्रांसमिट होते हैं डिसेंडेंट्स में. This is how it shows the linkage between ancestor and descendant during the process of evolution. The embryological evidences. Have you understood? Have you understood? On one hand, where Ernst Haeckel, he proposed what is called as recapitulation theory. There was another scientist who opposed and gave another theory, opposed recapitulation theory of Haeckel and gave another theory that is called as, name of the scientist is Carl Ernst von Baer. Carl Ernst von Baer. He gave opposite theory. The theory in which he suggested that embryos never pass through adult stages of other animal. उसने opposite theory दिया कि कोई भी organism का जो embryo development है, in that stage you cannot see the features of other adult variety. जैसे 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 फ्रॉग का डेवलपमेंट होता है, फ्रॉग अगर है, अगर वो जब एडल्ट होता है, फ्रॉग embryos never pass to the adult, और रादर फ्रॉग का जब एम्ब्रियोनिक स्टेजेस होता है तो वो फिश के एडल्ट फीचर्स, एडल्ट फिश के जो फीचर्स होते हैं उसको रिटेन नहीं करता है. फ्रॉग का एम्ब्रियो फिश के एडल्ट फीचर्स को रिपीट नहीं करेगा. सिमिलरली लिजर्ड का एम्ब्रियो फ्रॉग के एडल्ट फीचर्स को रिपीट नहीं करेगा. तो उनका ये कहना था कि किसी का एम्ब्रियोनिक स्टेजेस में दूसरे ग्रुप के particularly previous group के adult stages are not being repeated. That's what it's called von Baer's law. Carl Ernst von Baer's law over there regarding evolution. So both of these were examples of embryological evidences. बोलिए, यहां तक clear है concept? बोलिए. Done? कोई डाउट? चलिए बोलिए, कोई डाउट है? Okay. Now, evolution by natural selection. Our next topic is evolution by natural selection. Mind you, I have already explained to you who gave the concept of natural selection. Can you tell me? Yes, Charles Darwin gave the concept of natural selection, suggesting that in a population, organisms possess variations. Some are useful, some are harmful. Organisms with useful features, useful characters, useful variations, they have a greater chances of survival. They have higher reproductive fitness. Their tendency to continue their generations are higher. We say that they are naturally selected, reproductively fit organisms. And those which do not have appropriate or suitable or desirable features, they will be eliminated from the earth. Reproductively unfit organism will be eliminated. This is called natural selection phenomenon. One classic example we need to see about natural selection. The story goes back to 1850s. चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं स्टोरी. This is the story about, right? Uh, Grey moth, which is less melanized, and another one is a black moth. More melanized, melanin pigment level is higher, so will appear dark over there. Okay, this is about 1850. Period is 1850. Pre-industrialization phase in which industries are not established, fossil fuel and coal is not in use. So basically environment was clean without any pollution. In Britain, the trees of the trunks of the trees, jo stems hote trees ke, they used to have a very thick lush layer of lichens. Lichens are not purely green. Lichens are sort of grayish in color. Lichens का color कैसा होता है? Grayish color के होते हैं. So such a grayish colored lichens over there. They used to cover the stems of the trees. Now with this background, when two varieties of moths used to sit on these stems which are covered with the lichens having gray background, which moths can be seen? Can you make out? Over here two moths are there. How many of you can make out two moths over here? चलिए देवांशी हेल्प कीजिए. कौन सा मॉथ आपको दिखता है? पिक्चर की किस साइड पे दिखता है?
यस सर.
हाँ, सो एक मिनट, ये अगर फ्रेम है, सो हमारे एंगल से कौन से पे है मॉथ दिखता है आपको?
यस सर, राइट साइड ब्लैक वन इज देयर.
ओके, इज दिस द वन यू आर टॉकिंग अबाउट?
यस सर.
ओके, और दूसरा?
अपर साइड लेफ्ट साइड.
यहाँ पे?
नो सर, जस्ट बिलो दैट.
Exactly, you are right. Now all of you have a look at this one. The stem of the tree covered with the lush green, gray colored layer of lichens, and on which two moths are sitting. Which one is visible? Black moth. Which one is not visible? Gray moth. दूर से तो पता भी नहीं चलेगा यहाँ पे मौत है. आप ठीक से देखो तो पता चले, वरना पता भी ना चले. When birds come to catch these moths, insectivorous birds come predatory birds come to catch these moths, which moths will be easily seen and captured and will have a lower number compared with the other which are safe in this background? Which one's number would have been declining? Exactly. And which one's population would have a higher number? Grey moth. Okay. So in a given environment, the feature, the character of having lesser pigmentation, which can impart gray color, is a good character. It helps the organism to survive against predatory birds and its population is rising, whereas other one to have a black body, higher pigmentation is an adverse feature. It is not suitable for the given environment. So its population is declining, its number is declining. Bolo, clear हुआ concept? Now the things changed after 1850 in a post-industrialization phase. After few decades, when study was conducted, they found this scenario. The stems used to be covered because of the pollution. They cannot remain covered with the lichens. Do you remember? Lichens cannot grow in a polluted area. एक line आपने learn किया 11th standard में. Clear indicator of pollution that they cannot survive in pollution. So if somewhere lichens are there and suddenly disappear, it's a clear indication area is exposed to pollution. So after the 1850, this is after 1850, with a lot of pollution, the stems used to be covered by the smoke and not the lichens. Lichens will not grow. And smoke soot समझ में आता है आपको? कार्बन पाउडर. जैसे कैंडल अगर बर्न होती है तो नियर बाय अगर वॉल है तो उसके ऊपर ब्लैक कार्बन पाउडर स्टिक हो जाता है जिसको सूट कहते हैं. So do you know that soot coating over the trunk of the tree? पेड़ के ऊपर ऐसा, can you imagine that? नो तो लिखो अगर नहीं पता है तो एटलीस्ट. So you understand what is a carbon soot, carbon powder. Fine. Now with this background, can you see the gray moths are clearly visible compared with this black moth? दिखता भी नहीं है black moth. ये gray moth less melanized और ये black moth. Which one will be easily seen by the predatory birds? Tell me. इन दोनों में से कौन सा? Gray. So which one's population must be declining after 1850? Gray. And whose population started inclining? Melanized black moth. Isn't it a classic example of natural selection? The environmental conditions now changed, and for a new environment, more melanized body is a better feature. It conceals you, and less melanized body is the inferior feature. It exposes you to predation. So nature is supporting the higher population of black moth and lower population of grey moth. Scenario change हुआ 1850 के बाद और इनका population decline होने लगा grey moth. Now do you understand how come in the given environment, given character may be useful or harmful? Do you realize this natural selection effect? अगर पता चला तो यस लिखो, नहीं पता चला तो नो लिखो, एटलीस्ट कुछ तो लिखो। लास्ट फ्यू लेक्चर्स भी आपको मुझसे स्टडी नहीं करने हैं तो बोल दो, फिर मैं मैडम को दे देता हूँ, मुझे क्या है उसमें। एक नेचुरल सिलेक्शन का एक और एग्जाम्पल है कि अगर जिसमें एंथ्रोपोजेनिक एक्शन, नेचुरल सिलेक्शन की जगह पे सिलेक्शन ऑफ अ स्पीसीज ड्यू टू एंथ्रोपोजेनिक एक्ट, वो मैं आपको एक्सप्लेन कर रहा हूँ। जैसे एप्लीकेशन ऑफ herbicides and other insecticides or other pesticides, what it leads to, it will eliminate which variety? When we use pesticides, it will eliminate those pests which are sensitive to it. Okay, but which one will survive against it? Which are resistant variety. So in a way we are helping in selection of which variety. आपको समझ में आया ये एग्जाम्पल? In nature there is a pest which is damaging your crop. When you use the particular pesticide to kill them, majority will be killed which are sensitive to it, but few may not be killed which are already resistant to it. Your action has done what? You have given a chance for selection of that resistant variety over there. You created an environment in which natural selection sort of selection came into picture, eliminated the ones which are sensitive, selected the ones which are resistant varieties. This is called selection of resistant variety of pest because of anthropogenic action. Do you understand this? Okay, in a parallel manner, if you understand the application of antibiotics when we use, same thing happens na? Certain varieties of bacteria which are resistant will survive and others will be eliminated. So we are helping in evolution of those bacteria. See, after all this study of examples of evolution, whether in a paper, this melanized moth, or else antibiotic resistant bacteria or pesticide resistant varieties of pest, all these examples of evolution by anthropogenic action, they show that evolution is not a directional process. इसका कोई फिक्स डायरेक्शन नहीं है, एक जनरलाइज्ड डायरेक्शन होता है, ये जनरली प्रोग्रेसिवनेस पे चलता है कि every time a new form of life comes up with some better features, but it is not compulsion. कहीं पे ग्रे कलर वाला सिलेक्ट हो गया और थिंग्स चेंज हुआ और सडनली ब्लैक वाला सिलेक्ट हो गया, तो ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है कि ग्रे बेटर था और ब्लैक इंफीरियर या ब्लैक बेटर और ग्रे. It can be a randomly occurring phenomenon, the evolution. Also, it is also known as stochastic process, which is based on the chance events in nature and chance mutations in organisms. It is a kind of a stochastic process. अब क्वेश्चन है कि ये स्टोकेस्टिक का मीनिंग क्या होगा? व्हाट्स द मीनिंग ऑफ दिस टर्म स्टोकेस्टिक? तो स्टोकेस्टिक का मीनिंग ये होता है, जैसे आप एक पैटर्न को प्रिडिक्ट कर सकते हो अप टू 1x 1 लेवल। जैसे आप स्टॉक मार्केट में अगर अगर आपको कंडीशंस पता है कि जैसे दूसरे स्टॉक मार्केट्स ग्रीन में ओपन हुए हैं, मींस पॉजिटिव में ओपन हुए, प्लस में ओपन हुए हैं, एंड इकोनॉमी बेटर है, कोई नेगेटिव न्यूज नहीं है, तो आप प्रिडिक्ट कर सकते हो कि टुडे द स्टॉक मार्केट विल गो इन अ पॉजिटिव। इतना समझ में आता है? इकोनॉमिक्स से रिलेटेड है, स्टॉक मार्केट से रिलेटेड है कि स्टॉक मार्केट विल ओपन इन पॉजिटिव। ओके, अब आप इतना नहीं कह सकते कि कितने पॉइंट्स तक पॉजिटिव रहेगा। 100 पॉइंट्स का राइज मिलेगा निफ्टी को, या 50 पॉइंट्स का, या 20 पॉइंट्स का। आप थोड़ा बहुत प्रिडिक्शन कर सकते हो, तो इसको स्टोकेस्टिक प्रोसेस कहते हैं। The one which you can predict a little bit but not with the precision. आप समझ रहे हो? Are you getting the sense of what I am explaining? You can predict that it will go in this way, but you don't know precisely up to what level it will be rising in green, या फिर fall होगा तो कितना fall होगा वो uncertain रहता है। तो the magnitude of the fall or rise you may not predict, although you may predict the प्रॉपर उतना तो वो कर सकते हो कि शायद आज स्टॉक मार्केट रेड में ओपन होगा या ग्रीन में, बट कितना डाउन जाएगा या कितना अप जाएगा वो प्रेडिक्शन की कैपेसिटी इस प्रोसेस के लिए हमारे पास नहीं है। सो इट्स द रैंडमली अकरिंग प्रोसेस व्हिच इज नॉट ऑलवेज प्रोग्रेसिव, इट कैन बी डिजेनरेटिव आल्सो, रिग्रेसिव भी हो सकता है। एंड सेकंड, इट इज द स्टोकेस्टिक प्रोसेस व्हिच कैन बी predicted partially but not fully. With this, I conclude the topic and lecture. Our next topic shall be about adaptive radiation, which we will see in our next lecture. Till that point, over from our side. See you in the next lecture. Goodbye.